Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to OC Recovery's YouTube channel. I wanted to make a video talking about what acceptance is, what acceptance more than likely isn't, proper ways to apply it in a long period of time, looking at like 6, 12, 2, 5-year increments, why we can't really enforce acceptance, and how acceptance has been just really a gigantic game changer in my entire life. I'm kind of going to do this is going to be an overall about what unconditional self-life and other acceptance is. Before going any further, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Let us know what videos you want to see. Always comment down below. Let us what you like, maybe things you want to see changed, and stuff like that. I've been trying to, I use so many videos and TikToks in my office, and I've been doing some in my front yard. I do some in my backyard, and I kind of like this one area on my couch I have Milo sitting next to me right here. Let me show you real quick. He's obviously just a little, just a cutie right there. You know, well, he's cute when he's asleep, not when he's running around being a maniac. So, first of all, what is unconditional acceptance? So, unconditional acceptance from the theories that we use comes from Dr. Albert Ellis. Now, Dr. Albert Ellis, for years and years and years before he created rational thinking through REBT, he practiced psychoanalysis. The Freudian method. Carl Jung also practiced psychoanalysis as well. I would say Jung and Freud are probably the godfathers of psychoanalysis. The id, the ego, and the superego, looking into consciousness and subconsciousness, looking into dreams. Lots of really cool psychotherapy theories and evidence that came from that. And they really did, the both of them paved the way to what we have now. But, they had the best information they had at the time. Ellis was a little bit harsh on Freud and Jung, more so on Freud, which is understandable when you look at kind of into the mind of Ellis and you think about why he thought that way. But unconditional self-life and other acceptance, which he took pieces from Stoics, such as Marcus Aurelius, Seneca the Younger, was a Greco-Roman philosophy based around, you really have no control over what happens in your life. Tools such as negative visualization, which is a tool I use to this day. I don't use it on a daily basis, but it helps looking at the reality of life, that we can't control other people. People will be rude to us, mean, make fun of us, things won't go our way. Breaking down why certainty is absurd, Voltaire's famous statement. Looking into Friedrich Nietzsche's statement, a man with a why can withstand any how, which is a great statement, man or woman. And really taking philosophical perspectives from many different Greco-Roman philosophers and just philosophers over the last, 1,000 years, 2,000 years. So, and then putting that together and then forming rational thinking on the basis of unconditional self-life and other acceptance. So when he started using this philosophy back in 1955, it took about, I would say probably 6 years in the readings I've read, and I've read probably about 6 or 7 Ellis books and plenty of other background stories about him, including his autobiography that he wrote, REBT, It Worked For Me, It Can Work For You Too, written in 2003 when he was 90 years old, 89, 90, and he passed away in 2007. So he still was very active with his Friday night workshops all the way up until he died at the Albert Ellis Institute in New York. So what happened was he started to realize that people were currently disturbed by the things in their life that are happening now, the belief they have on those things. So the past, while many people believe that the past was causing people a large problem, it more than likely wasn't the genesis of the problem. Once they start to understand their belief systems they hold on those things are more than likely the things that are holding them back the most. Here comes Daisy right here. She's in the bottom of my feet, probably going to sit down. I'll scratch you, boo-boo. You want to come up here for the video? Come here. Okay, or you can just sit there and have me sit in this awkward position and scratch you, which is totally fine because she loves being scratched because she's a princess. So, what he started to realize was the Stoic philosophers from 2,500 years ago, such as Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, which might as well be, in my opinion, one of the greatest texts ever written, since we still use a lot of those principles today. And I love when she sits here. And, there's still applicability. So that's really the basis of rational thinking. Now, when you look at unconditional self-life and other acceptance, the reason why we have the self, other, and life is because applying unconditional self-life and other acceptance really can get underneath any emotional disturbances that we think we're experiencing right now. So when he was forming this, he came up with this theory that has over 800 peer-reviewed studies done at the time he did them. He had written and co-authored over 75, 80 books by the time he passed away. and having the Albert Ellis Institute for decades and decades and decades. So we have what's called A plus B equals C, and you can apply this to anything in your life. It doesn't just have to be correlated to your OCD suffering or anxiety suffering. You could plug it into relationships, whether you have OCD or not. You could plug it into your work and all that stuff. So A is the activating event, the things that happen to us in our life, what people say to us, what people do to us physically, the hardships in life that will always be there. Another great quote is Aristotle, it takes two people to become angry. All of this plays into all of that. It's important to realize that being offended by by verbiage from what other people say about us, no matter what we think, how mean it is an inside job. So when someone says, I'm offended, what they really mean is I offended myself. When someone is angry, they say, I primarily made myself angry. If something made us angry, then every single time someone experienced that exact thing, they would be angry. And I'm going to break that down here in principle and concept soon. So those are the activating events. So most people think, as I did before I started practicing this for years, 3 years now, more 2.5 years, but that's irrelevant, is that I thought A equals C. So activating event, what people do, the things in their life, diseases, equals C. Our emotional hardship, our unhealthy emotions, such as chronic depression, shame, guilt, anxiety, depersonalization and derealization, extreme rage and resentment. So what happens is you say something as simple as, that person made me angry. But once you dive deeper in that in a more philosophical tone, you start to realize that that's not actually what's going on. That doesn't mean you won't be frustrated. Many people think by applying this to their lives, they lose emotion. I've heard many people say that stoicism is a lack of emotion. It's not. Stoicism is a regulation on your emotion, and more than likely, in my opinion, the most optimal way to live your life in a balanced manner through emotional outlet, from changing your perspective over years and years and years. So that's the key for that. Now, that's how most people think, A equals C, right? And I thought that. We all think that to a degree, but that's not actually what's going on. We have another thing called A plus B equals C, and B is our beliefs, our rational beliefs and our irrational beliefs, our light irrational beliefs and our hot irrational beliefs, light, cold, whatever you want to call it. And those are all predicated into how we experience our emotional outlet, such as chronic anger and rage and resentfulness, and always trying to prove someone wrong. So let's say someone makes an OCD joke, and in your mind you're like, that's terrible, this is the worst thing ever, they should never say that. Once you look into the shoulds, musts, and oughts, and why shouldn't they say that? Why must that not happen? The same thing is true for deservingness and fairness. Once you start to apply the rational thinking perspectives through Stoicism and REBT into stuff such as child cancer and life tragedies and stuff such as the Holocaust, as atrocious the acts can be and the life circumstances, to say that they should not happen doesn't make a lot of sense. It's very irrational because they did happen. That's very different from saying that you wished with all of your heart that they didn't happen, but they did happen. So to say that they shouldn't have happened doesn't make any sense. It's like saying that the sky shouldn't be blue because the sky is blue. You could say something along the lines of, in a rational perspective, I would really prefer if the sky was pink, but it's not, it's blue. And that's just a very simple, crude example for stuff like that. So breaking down the beliefs of fairness and deservingness from a global perspective, on a global concept, is really how we get ourselves to a place where we're really experiencing much healthier emotions for long-term outcomes with anything in life. When you look at shame and guilt, there's a lot of misinformation surrounding shame and guilt. Even the top researchers on shame and guilt, I don't think understand, whether it's ignorance or blissful blindness, blind optimism of not wanting to look at the reality of what causes shame. Now, shame, guilt, anger, those are human emotions. Those are natural, innate, biological human emotions that most people will all experience to some point in their life. But the reason why they're chronic in nature is not because of the things that happen to us, not because of the perceived things that you think you've done. It's because of the belief you hold on yourself. Conditional self-acceptance, also called self-esteem. That's why one of the books on the OCD recovery reading list is called The Myth of Self-Esteem. It's book number 3, which is a very tough philosophical read for many people because you have to break down that belief system of self-esteem. So if you go into Google, I talk about this a lot, and you type in self-esteem, numerous books will come up talking about self-esteem. But what we have actually is self-esteem is a myth. It's not a real thing. it's real in the sense of the term, but the way we use it doesn't make a lot of sense. And what do I mean by that? Daisy's about to start licking the stand. She loves doing this for some reason. It's odd when I'm making videos. The stand must taste good, right, Daisy? And self-esteem is something that you always need to replenish. So if you've heard me talk about the example at the fair, when you take the hammer and you have to smash the hammer down and hit the bell up top, that's conditional self-acceptance, also known as self-esteem. As fast as it goes up is as fast as it has to come back down. And you constantly need to replenish that. And like any other drug, it needs more usage over time. So more Instagram pictures with filters, more changing of quotes, more changing your hairstyle. Not everyone falls into this trap. Humans naturally, more than likely biologically, culturally, and just the environment that they live in will perpetuate a more grasp on needing to prove. This is why TikTok is such a big problem right now. TikTok is not inherently bad. Just how alcohol is not inherently bad. It's the person using it, the genetic factors, biological factors, the environmental factors, the pasts. In order to look at things in a more rational perspective, one usually needs to get comfortable with looking into things deeper. And not in an OCD sense where you're looking and trying to solve something. I'm not talking about that. But thinking about something more in the sense of, okay, what's actually going on here? So it's very easy to say, humans tend to be very surface level because it's easy and comfort because of the world that we live in right now. So when you look at something like the A equals C versus the A plus B equals C, it's very easy to think that person made me angry. Instead of, well, I didn't like what that person said, but the only reason I'm offended is because I have a belief about their words, such as they should never do that, this is terrible, this is the worst thing ever. And that's what Ellis really kind of practiced for 70 years from when he passed away. Well, 55 when he created it, probably was dabbling with it before that. I know he was from his writings, all the way up until he passed away in 2007. And Albert Ellis's book, REBT, It Worked for Me, It Can Work for You Too, is a terrific book going into all the things that had happened to him in his life and really the hardship he faced, many physical issues, ailments, stomach. He was in the hospital for nephritis for one time for 11 months or 10 months. So to be able to apply these conditions to his life over all the stuff he went through is pretty amazing. And I think that is just an incredible thing to think about. So I think overall, sorry, my 20% battery just came up. That's really a good background about unconditional self-life, other acceptance. It's important to realize that OCD or anything in your life will make it feel like this is the wrong way because it wants to keep you safe from an OCD perspective. It also goes against the herd mentality. So let me give you an example, something that is very difficult for many people to talk about. I made a rational, reasonable deduction to no longer believe in God or the afterlife. I think in theory it's the most probable cause, but that doesn't mean that I could be wrong. I certainly could be wrong. There's nothing is certain but the physical body dying one day. The famous saying, there's nothing certain but death and taxes, but then certain people don't pay taxes, so that can't be certain either. Funny statement I used to say about people when you look at celebrities and stuff like that, there are people who don't pay taxes. So it's not as simple as that. But in order for me to make opinions, the first thing to remember is from a rational perspective, in applying unconditional self-life, other acceptance, is you don't need other people to understand you. When I state opinions now, I state them from deductions I've made from rational thinking perspectives, my environment, all of that. Probably the little free will I have, it's another conversation if I do not believe in free will. I believe that things happen because of biological brain tendencies. We are not human beings, we are a brain and a nervous system. We are a central and peripheral nervous system, and that is what we are. Very hard for people to cope with that from the existential and solipsism world. But we don't even understand consciousness whatsoever. Anyone that says they understand consciousness is really trying to sell you something. It's too complex. The brain is too complex. And those are my opinions. And when people say you're wrong, you're an idiot for not believing in religion, I don't need to prove myself. So I just say, oh, okay. And that has taken me years to get to that point. So that is a good theory on and background about the practical application and maybe a case history about what unconditional self-life and other acceptance is, coming from Greco-Roman philosophers, Stoicism, other people over the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th century, and all sorts of stuff like that. And how I applied it to my life and how I went from a mental hospital with suicide attempts and thinking about suicide all day, every day, not wanting to be here, constantly thinking about taking my life, constantly thinking about leaving my wife to go live in the woods and just cry forever, not going to work, not going to the gym, being compulsive with everything, to a place where I am today, which is recover from sensory motor OCD, really far in my OCD journey, and living life on my terms, which is a super important part of my life. OCD recovery is a lifelong process. Doesn't mean you suffer lifelong, but applying the principles from unconditional acceptance will usually be a lifelong process. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget, if you're interested in any of the webinars coming up, please email phil@ocdrecovery.com. Again, that is phil@ocdrecovery.com. You can ask him what the webinars coming up. We know we have a POCD, existential, ROCD, sensory motor, guilt. That's almost sold out. And yeah, it's a great, it's great. It's a lot of fun. We do a lot of questions and answers and talking, and it gets the community together. We also have a huge Facebook group with almost 17,000 members, the fastest growing Facebook group in OCD. We have Rob's Instagram, which is OCDrecovery.com, one thing, OCDrecovery.com, and mine, a guy who hikes. And we look forward to interacting with you. We know what it's like. We have a very keen understanding of OCD from our personal experiences with suffering. So thank you so much for watching. And as always, have a great day.